This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Great to have you with us. For those joining us live on YouTube and to everyone listening on their favorite podcast feed, if you would, give us a 5-star rating for you podcast listeners. A nice comment would help out as well. And if you're with us on YouTube, hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed. Big show today to complete the Winnipeg Jets season. Really, the next couple days will be Jet wrap-up shows. Today was garbage bag day. Players coming in, cleaning out the lockers, and speaking to the media for the last time as members of this year's Winnipeg Jets squad. We'll hear from a number of Winnipeg Jets over the course of the next 30, 45 minutes. Connor Hellebuyck, Captain Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, Pierre Luc Dubois, and more. And then we'll discuss it all with Jeff Hamliton of the Winnipeg Free Press coming up a little bit later on in the program. As always, we're brought to you by our great family of sponsors: Little Brown Jug Brewing, Breezy Bend Country Club, Not Autocorp, Boston Pizza, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Assiniboia Downs, Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Royal Sports, and PolicyMe.com, and our gaming partner, CoolBet. Let's get right into it and welcome in the CTO, Michael Remis, as we begin. What day is it today, Remis? Is it Tuesday, Wednesday? It's hard to keep track. I just know it's not a game day, and now we'll kind of have a bit better of a calendar knowing when weekends actually are going forward. But what's going on?
Yeah, it is Tuesday. No, sorry, Wednesday. It's here. We're working off the top. You know, if you were here for the live show to start yesterday, I had my Garth Algar moment, as someone commented, where I'm like, "Hi, I'm having a good time." Which is tough to keep it going while you're trying to troubleshoot, so it maybe seemed a bit out of sorts. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put on the spinning Winnipeg Sports Talk logo, and then I can actually devote attention to figuring out our issues.
Veteran move right there, Reem. You might not be a veteran, but it seemed like a veteran move, although a few tense moments early on in the program. But hey, we're here, and we've got a lot to talk about, as we heard from all the Winnipeg Jets to finish up the season, meeting with the media today. And we'll get to that in just a couple minutes. But first up, Reem, I do want to talk about last night in the NHL. The Canes are bounced. We'll see what's next for Rod Brind'Amour. That'll be a hot topic in the National Hockey League. But wow, how about Mark Stone and the Vegas Golden Knights coming back, third period, tying the game up, and then the Winnipeg native, the captain of the Golden Knights, being the overtime hero, blocking a shot, getting out behind the defenseman, getting the pass, and drilling it behind Grubauer less than a minute into OT. And after the Vegas Golden Knights had been pretty much written off 3 games ago, they're now 1 win away from moving on to take on the Habs for a trip to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, incredible what Vegas has been able to do. Mark Stone, one of those trade deadline acquisitions they made and then signed him to a long-term deal a couple years ago. I had said before the game, watch out for that thin Colorado air, and I was right for the first 2 periods of the game, but in period 3, Vegas put it on, and I don't know if this would be an upset. I think we thought this would go 7, maybe it still can, but Vegas is in the driver's seat, and this would be another tough loss for Colorado. We know they ran into the goalie injuries last year, which led to Michael Hutchinson getting some starts. But, Vegas goes, what an incredible story, the start of this season. It seems like sort of the, franchise. They're contenders every year now. Well done for Vegas, but what great hockey that we're seeing. And it does remind me, it reminds you a lot of the Kings-Blackhawks Western Conference Final of like 2012 or so. I think that, or was it 2014? Either way, 2 great teams meeting, not for the Stanley Cup. So some great hockey. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, it's funny. Rob Maloney, Stone showing what an $8 million player needs to do. Take note 26. So maybe a little harsh. He's 9.5, I do believe. That's the number on Stone, if I'm not mistaken. Every time Mark Stone does something great, you always see it. I always get the mentions. Oh, the Jets could have had Mark Stone. That's just not. Don't get bent as a Jets fan if you're seeing Mark Stone do great things with the Vegas Golden Knights. Yes, he was traded at the deadline to Vegas. it was the worst kept secret in the league that Mark Stone was likely going to be signing with the Vegas Golden Knights in the offseason. So there was no, I mean, that was the team that he was willing to sign a contract with. That's the team that he wanted to. He's got the great relationship with Kelly McCrimmon dating back to his days as a Brandon Wheat King. So I wouldn't lose too much sleep about a missed opportunity for Winnipeg because, it would have taken a ton to get Mark Stone there at the deadline, and in all likelihood would have been a rental. But hey, listen, we'd all love to get a great hometown player like that back in the Peg. But right now he's doing what he's doing for the team that, from all accounts, he wanted to be a part of, and that's the Vegas Golden Knights. And that was pretty a wild night last night for that win. Cannot wait for Game 6. And you know what? Great season for the Carolina Hurricanes, Reem, but they merely got one game farther than the Winnipeg Jets. How about Tampa Bay? I mean, for all the playoff misery they had leading into finally getting over the hump last year, this team seems absolutely ready to take that next step and try and run it back.
Yes, I had Carolina going to the Cup. They've made so many additions the last couple years. They were ready. Last year, they got bounced by the Bruins. They made it 1 year farther they got 1 year farther than last year. So, but still, I do think it's a disappointment. Now, some questions for them. Rod Brindamore, his contract's coming up. I think I saw Sarah Sivian from The Athletic saying he is staying in Carolina. I mean, it's not official yet. And Dougie Hamilton, he's their big free agent. So we'll see how Carolina retools. But I like the moves that they made to put themselves in a position. But I mean, you're the champs until you're not, Huss. And Tampa, they're looking like on a course here. I'm not going to mention that they are over the salary cap technically because it's within what they're doing is within the rules.
There's no salary cap in the playoffs, remember?
Yeah, we're going to be hearing about it, I think, as they move on. But a well-timed injury for Nikita Kucherov definitely put them in an advantageous position.
Yeah, they milked it, and hey, they're looking good right now. Now, as far as the other series, big test for the Boston Bruins to try to survive to a Game 7 in the Coliseum tonight. And that building is going to be an absolute madhouse. I cannot wait for this game. Pulling for Barry Trotz and the Islanders to get through. Certainly not the sexiest team, but a great team. I mean, they do, as I've said this many times in this program, I don't know if there's a coach in the National Hockey League that squeezes more out of the talent on his roster consistently year after year than Barry Trotz. And the fact that they've got the Bruins on the rope speaks to the job that he's done and the buy-in that he has from every single guy wearing an Islanders uniform. So really looking forward to that game tonight. We're going to spend a lot of time hearing from some of the Winnipeg Jets. We'll get to that in just a minute. Before we do want to tell you about PolicyMe.com, our newest sponsor. PolicyMe is an online life insurance company that allows Canadians to buy life insurance in minutes, 100% online, and at the most affordable price. Policy has simplified all the unnecessary bells and whistles in the traditional life insurance process, resulting in a fully underwritten term policy that's fast, easy, and affordable. Listen, the reason why people procrastinate so much on things like life insurance, which are so important for you and your family's future, is that it's a pain in the ass. It's very easy to procrastinate on. You'll do it later until it's too late. And that's why PolicyMe is so great. I mean, it makes it easy. It takes out a lot of the BS and gives you the best rates, averaging 10 to 20% lower than other insurers in Canada. You'll find out if you're approved for coverage instantly instead of waiting weeks like most other companies. And most people don't require a medical exam. And the bottom line is what usually and traditionally took weeks and months of confusing paperwork and insurance jargon can now be done in around 15 minutes through an easy-to-understand application. It's very simple, folks. Go to PolicyMe.com. You'll answer a few questions, find out whether you even need life insurance to begin with, and over a quarter of people said they actually don't. But if you do, you'll get the best options at the best price. Quick, easy, simple, online. PolicyMe.com. And when they ask you how you heard about PolicyMe, please make sure you click podcast. Also want to shout out Royal Sports. Euro 22 is beginning on Friday. That'll be a real fun tournament to follow over the course of the next few weeks. And Royal has been, the merch headquarters for all sports, but especially soccer. Nations from around the world, the top clubs from around the world, incredible kits, jerseys. They've got it all there. In addition to NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, you name it, they've got it. Not to mention the fitness section, disc golf, soccer, baseball, bikes coming out the yin yang. It's all there in one spot. Royal Sports, 750 Rally, or 750 Pembina Highway, the Superstore, and 650 Rally in EK. And also a big shout out and thanks to the Nick and Nicky DQ group, DQ Niverville, Dairy Queen Northgate, Polo Park, and St. Anne's. We all know it's not too nice out right now, but hopefully get a little nice later. But it's always blizzard weather in Winnipeg at the Nick and Nicky DQ groups. And if you're thinking about maybe a little festivities coming up, get on their cakes. Nobody sells more, and you can find out more or even talk to them about a pre-order on Instagram. Give them a follow at DQ Manitoba. All right, Remo, there's a lot to get to today from the Winnipeg Jets. And we'll hear from, not all of the players, but a number of them. And, I know there'll be a few interviews that might be for the fan base, a little more contentious, a little more controversial, if you will. And we'll get to that with Jeff Hamliton. But I figured the best way to start off Garbage Bag Day would be with the guy that is always positive, always confident, and is the MVP of the Winnipeg Jets year after year. And that, of course, is Connor Hellebuyck. And we've got a couple clips from Hellebuyck that I wanted to play for you. The first one started off on, where they're at right now and winning now and in the future.
I think every single organization out there should be like that. Every year you don't want to waste a year just going guessing. You want to win. And I think having the conversations I've had now, I think they do want to win, and they want to win now, and they're looking for the right pieces. And my mindset is now, and next year I'm going to say the same thing. And you also don't want to blow it for future years, so you want to be smart about it. But I think our organization definitely wants it now, and they're going to do what they have to do.
Winning now and the urgency to win now. And, that's exactly what I think you'd expect to hear from the goaltender. And certainly that needs to be the message from the organization to the goaltender, Remis, is how important he has been in getting wins for the Winnipeg Jets. I think we all know that there'd be a hell of a lot less W's in Winnipeg if Connor Hellebuyck wasn't in the net.
Yeah, Connor Hellebuyck, he is the reason why they were able to go so far. You look at his save percentage against Edmonton. It's incredible. Throughout the year, when the games where they would get outshot, he would be there making save after save. And even in Montreal, it could have been so much worse if he wasn't stopping all those odd man opportunities.
He was so good in Game 4. The whole series he was good. But the fact that game got to overtime was just a perfect example of how this guy stands up in every situation for this hockey club and gives them a chance to win. To be honest, speaking of a chance to win, the concept that after that 60 minutes of hockey, that the Jets had a chance, they were one shot away from getting the series back to Winnipeg. A big testament to just how good Hellebuyck has been and was for the Winnipeg Jets. Now, the other thing I love about Hellebuyck, being a positive guy, he will always, he, in a lot of ways, envisions things and tries to believe them. And I think he's done that personally with him, believing that he can be the best, working to do it, and then coming through with the Vezina Trophy season and the play that he's had this year. But he also believes that for his team. And he said they're not just close to winning, but in true Hellebuyck fashion, said close to being a dynasty.
Well, every year it seems like we had a new piece that is a difference maker. Like we had Kyle over here, and he started scoring, and then this year we got Stanley, and the year before that we had Pionk, and you can see that the pieces coming in, they're making big moves, and they're playing bigger than themselves. And when that core starts to grow like that, that's when you start to get a dominating team. And we're close. Nothing that happened this year was a fluke. We're very close to being able to make runs and being a dynasty, but it's just going to take a few more pieces and we'll be there.
I'll say this about Hellebuyck. He does not set low goals for himself or his team. I think a lot of people sort of chuckled when you mentioned the word dynasty, because we're talking about multiple championships, and we know how this season ended. But behind all that, Remis, I think you got to love that as a Jet fan, to hear Hellebuyck, knowing the type of guy he is. This isn't someone just firing a bunch of bullshit into a microphone. This is a guy that actually believes every single thing that he says. And you know what? When a player like that has that amount of belief, even if it might not seem that way, I think it's good for the fan base. There's not a lot of players that can step into a microphone and say something like that. Connor Hellebuyck's the one guy on this team that can do it, whether people are buying it or not.
Yeah, and I think if this team could, have a long run, it's because he's the goalie. I mean, you look at his numbers, you look at his saves above expectation. He is among the top goalies in the league, and this team needs to go out and get some help for him on defense because he is seeing way too many shots night after night, and we always like hearing from him, hearing his belief in the team, but, I mean, we've kind of seen, I think this is going to be a theme throughout the show, that we've kind of, this story that we've seen, the story that was them kind of just no-showing in, the final of the playoffs. We saw it in 2019. We've seen this up and down look for a couple of years. And I don't know, who you're going to go to bring in, but you look at it and, again, it's I don't want to say it's a broken record, but we saw throughout the season. You said the regular season, the playoffs kind of mirrored each other. You had those highs and then you had some real bad lows. But I do admire Hellebuyck coming out and his comments. We do like hearing from him.
He's the best. I mean, as I said, I'll listen to Hellebuyck talk about anything. I mean, he's the one guy. If he had a podcast, I'd be listening the second it dropped every single day with whatever he was talking about. But anyways, it was interesting to see the confidence he has going forward. And that's a good thing. You want your most important player to be happy, to be committed, and to believe in the future. And it certainly does seem that Connor Hellebuyck does. Let's hear from the captain, Blake Wheeler. And, naturally, when you had a team start off the way they did in the playoffs and, have a sweep in the first round and feel real good, I think people around Winnipeg were hoping that we could make plenty of comparisons to the 2018 squad the way they went. Now, of course, the Jets did have that 7-game epic win in the round 2 against Nashville and then ended it against the Vegas Golden Knights, unfortunately, after winning game 1, losing 4 straight. They lost 4 straight in the second round this year to the Montreal Canadiens. And Blake Wheeler was asked about, comparing 2018 to where he and his team is right now today.
I think 2018 was, a team that was built a lot different than our team now. Our back end was really strong in terms of just having veteran guys and guys that have been here for a while. It's kind of a strength of our team, and our core was still very young. What you consider the core of our team, outside of myself probably was very, very young. And that core is now, they're maturing into men in the primes of their career. So I think that those 2 years, the back-to-back years were, those were probably very real chances to win it all. I think our team this year, we have a lot of the makings of what it takes to win it all. So I'm excited about, the direction that we're headed. I think, there's a lot to look forward to for our group.
There's Captain Blake Wheeler kind of comparing 28 till now. It's interesting. And I guess part of it, Remis, is why the way things ended so disappointing is that, Wheeler's right. Yes, you have a significant difference on the blue line. And I know he's not singling out the defense is not able to get it done the way the 2018 group did. It's a different group of athletes, different amount of investment from the organization in salaries on the blue line. That's a big part of those young players that Wheeler referred to in 2018 being more into their prime now, being paid more on second contracts and whatnot. The comparisons, I guess, for Winnipeg Jet teams in 2018 will always be there, especially with this core being close to intact from that group, Reem, until they do something else special and maybe surpass what they were able to do in their longest playoff run yet.
Yeah, 2018, I think, we're going to be comparing all Jets teams to that team because that team had what it took to win the Stanley Cup. They had defense, they had goaltending, they had the forward depth. 2019 was very similar, but I think someone wrote in our comments that, the Jets haven't been good since January 2019. And I think January 2019 is definitely a point that we're still looking at where, from 2018 to then, I mean, they were on top of, the expected goals. They would always outshoot their opponent. But something happened, and we saw that go into the playoffs in 2019 where, they went down to the Blues. They were able to come back, had that heartbreaking Game 5, which I won't stop talking about, and then the Game 6.
Game 5.
Which
five.
I know, but how about Game 6? Because we never really talked about Game 6 because it was so horrible, but you look at the way that they played in this series once, they were facing elimination, it just brought up a lot of those memories.
Game 3 and 4 was almost like a 2-part sequel to Game 6 in 2019, unfortunately. And listen, I mean, we're talking about this year's team. I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole. Maybe we'll have a conversation in the summer sometime, but you still wonder how that season cratered the way it did when you're coming off 2018, that run, expectations are super high. You exceed those expectations if it's possible in the first half of the season, and then it just went down and then ended up in the first round against the St. Louis Blues, who of course then went on to win the damn cup, which I don't think anyone was too pleased about. Obviously coming off a series the way that it happened, there was a lot of questions about the performance of the team, which led to questions about injuries to the captain, as well as, the message, the coaching. Is this still the way this team should be going forward? No surprise, Blake Wheeler, a big supporter of Paul Maurice, but he touched on all of those in this next clip. This is the captain from this morning.
I don't know yet. And, it's not – one of my biggest pet peeves is when guys get up and, after the season and start talking about how all their injuries, everyone in that room is playing through something right now. I'm no different. So, getting some things looked at and then just kind of take it from there. We'll see.
We'll go next to Paul Friesen from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Paul.
Thanks, Gregor. Blake, thanks for giving us something to write about. Appreciate that this year. How far do you think your team is away from being the contender for a cup?
Well, I think we're already a contender, right? I mean, you get into the final 8 of 31 teams, you're in the conversation. I think that, like I said, kind of the hardest part is formulating a core group of players that you believe are, the identity of your team and the guys that can push you over the hump. And I think we have that. I mean, that's a great step in the right direction. I mean, starting with our goaltender and then, working around to some of the guys that are now, kind of getting to their mid to late 20s. That's a group you can get really excited about. So now it's just supplementing, just trying to, and that's, in a flat cap world, that's going to be Kevin's kind of challenge this summer is how do you fit the pieces in to kind of, push that core over the top. And I guess that's what remains to be seen.
Just a couple more for Blake. We'll go back to Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weaver.
Blake, you've been Paul Maurice's biggest backer. Why is he still the right man to lead this team moving forward?
I've been on teams where, the coach has lost the team and the message isn't being received and guys roll their eyes every time he says something. And that's just never happened with Paul. I think, his message is still received. I think the guys, have just a ton of respect for him because he's first of all a good person and a good man, and he treats us as people. And so I think in some respects, the way Paul handled our team this year was almost as good as he's ever been. I mean, I felt a lot of the decisions he made, whether it be line combinations or what have you, were right on. I think his feel for our team was really good this year. So, there's a lot of coaches that haven't won playoff rounds, and to win a playoff round, this year, it's not our goal, but there is still some kind of accomplishment in that. And, he would never acknowledge that because it's not what we're in this business for, but big picture wise to make the playoffs, win a round. You just have to kind of keep that in perspective and take the positives out of that.
All right, so there's Blake Wheeler touching on injuries, the season, and of course a little more on his support of Coach Paul Maurice. And listen, I don't think anyone expected any different. I mean, Ken, posed it in the question that he's always been the biggest backer of Paul Maurice, and I think Paul Maurice has been one of the biggest backers of Blake Wheeler. I mean, many would say that this is, and he said it in the past. I mean,
I don't know.
The leaders are the guys that kind of take control of the room, and Blake Wheeler's been the guy that's been given the keys to the room, if you will. He, along with Mark Scheifele, as the leaders and the centerpieces, if you will, of this team. And listen, I know some people are like, oh, I wonder what the players are going to say about the coach. Well, listen, the players aren't going to say anything other than what you're hearing, in that they believe going forward. I mean, what are they going to do? Say, yeah, I know the coaching wasn't good. Yeah, it definitely needs to be better. I mean, yeah, you're not going to hear anything like that. And, whether or not they believe it or not. I mean, I'm not suggesting that for a minute. But if people were expecting, Maurice to get skewered, after the series against Montreal by his own team, they're going to be waiting for a long time. It wasn't surprising, though, to hear Wheeler speak like that about Paul Maurice. But in some ways, Remis, the question about the future of the team, and Wheeler makes some good points. I mean, I think a lot of people did sort of expect the Jets to be a real borderline team this year. They, for all intents and purposes, clinch a playoff spot with about 6 weeks left plus in the season, and then ended up, in a very stagnant place, or some would say going in reverse in the final month of the season. But then again, I mean, I think Maurice prepared his team very well. They executed exactly as they needed to against Edmonton. And that sort of erased a lot of the bad feelings and bad tendencies of the final month of the year. However, they all returned after a 9-day break against the Montreal Canadiens. And, I know Wheeler said that, that they've never lost it. They've always responded to the message. I don't know what the message was in round 2 against Montreal, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't to do what they did, to play the way they did. So, true somewhere in the middle, like so many of the things that we've talked about lately. But Reem, I'm interested in your thoughts on that. I mean, I wasn't expecting really any different than Blake Wheeler, but from Blake Wheeler, especially when it comes to the coach Paul Maurice, because I think they do have an incredible amount of respect for Paul, as they should. And I think a lot of the players, even the players that were younger that have moved up, have benefited a lot from the way that he has helped them, turn into the players that they are right now. But it is hard to ignore the big picture of the amount of time coaches normally, run their, the full circle with a club and with a group. And, it makes a lot of sense as to why we're getting some of these questions about the Winnipeg Jets. And is it the right thing to move forward status quo after, another season of ups and downs, as we've alluded to?
Sorry, I'm just having a computer issue. I can't see my mouse cursor, so I'm trying to troubleshoot that. So I can't do anything right now. I'm actually really annoyed. So
well, you can still talk, that's for sure.
I can talk, but I can't do anything. I don't see my mouse on the screen. So I know we got a bunch of people in here. We're trying to do a show. What's up, everyone in chat? I've never experienced this. Like, we've done 6. This is 68. We're one more from a really nice number of shows. And, like, my mouse cursor disappeared, so I don't know if I need to restart my computer or what. This is bullshit.
Ooh, that could be that could
Sorry,
be
I don't swear. I don't swear often, but
only when he's really mad. Only when he's really mad. So just, let's bring people that are live with us in. We can take this out of the pod later on. So in the midst of that, while we were playing that, the mouse cursor disappeared, and now you essentially are just looking at a screen without any control. Is that basically where we're at?
Like, I can move the mouse around. There's no cursor, and someone says use the tab. I've tried. Tracy says reboot. I could reboot. Then we got to restart this stream. Is it battery operated? It's a battery mouse. No. Like, I can move around the mouse. I just can't see the pointer. Like, I can see it highlighting stuff. I'm doing things. I just can't see the pointer. I know I need to reboot. Rebooting would fix everything. I just don't know if I really want to.
Yeah, exactly. And how long that would take, is we have a
I don't know how long
that here. We do have Jeff Hamliton coming up in 15 minutes. I do want to make sure we can get back to this and fire things up.
Well, I won't be able to bring him on if I don't have a mouse.
Yeah.
That would probably, yeah. So I mean, the wireless mouse is working. It's just the pointer completely disappeared. I've been using Windows computers my whole life. I've never had this. Rob Money, did I check my flux capacitor? The drama. So,
any amateur IT guys in the chat want to give a couple of suggestions here?
I have a trackpad and a mouse. Control Alt Delete. I've been using Function F5. Oh, Control Alt Delete did it. Oh man.
Colton Mock MVP of the WST.
Save Colton. Save the stream. Oh my God. Colton. Wow.
Colton, send us an email. We'll hook you up with something from the we'll definitely the tickle trunk. The tickle trunk will be loaded in. Oh, Remis is back.
I'm back. Oh my God.
Colton, you're the man. All it took me was to get one of our loyal WST listeners to come in with a little IT help live on the air, and we got it done.
I knew someone would be able to help. I had to bring it up. I was like sitting there like Googling, how do I fix
Colton
this?
is replacing Remis. Ice cream cake for Colton. Colton deserves beer and ice cream. Colton's the man.
That's amazing.
All right. Well, listen, we did have a little break on that. I hope you were all entertained as Remis freaked out and Colton bailed us out in the middle of a program, but we can't get back to it. I mean, listen, before we move on, Reem, now that your blood pressure can go down and you can relax.
It's a tense moment here.
Wheeler, Maurice, I mean, we know how close these individuals are, the respect they have for each other. And really, I mean, I think when you talk about, when people expecting, some significant changes moving forward of the club, and why so often even fans of Paul Maurice, I think, will entertain that maybe, maybe they would consider going in a different direction or making some sort of change, is that if you have the same coach, if you have the same players going forward, I mean, there will be some tweaks to the roster, but I don't think it's going to be, massively different next year, at least amongst those core pieces. If you don't change coaching or the message or any of that, do you change some of the core pieces? And I think it's pretty clear that the organization's made a pretty significant commitment long-term to Blake Wheeler to be the captain going forward. But a big part of that was working with Paul Maurice. So, I mean, you certainly do understand the relationship between those two have been running the show here for a pretty good amount of time. And the question of some in the fan base is that the best way to continue going on and expect different results going further in the postseason?
Hold on, I'm responding to these in chat. Yeah, and I can see why Blake would be in favor of Paul Maurice. I mean, one thing that was the big criticism early this year, we were all on Blake Wheeler. I mean, beginning of the season, he didn't look like himself at all, and he disclosed after that he was injured, and you could see that. But I think the puzzling thing from the season for a lot of people is, well, why was he still getting top minutes when he clearly wasn't playing up to the level he's seen? He was clearly injured, and so if Blake Wheeler, he keeps getting those top minutes, keeps being on, number one power play, getting to play with the guys who he wants to, of course he's going to be in favor of the coach. And I don't know if I guess that's just the way things have gone. So, Blake Wheeler, he's been the leader for a while, and that's just the way that it's been, Huss. So I'm not surprised. I'm also not surprised. I mean, a player is going to come out. I think we all know, everyone in chat knows, hey, what do you think of the coach? Players aren't going to be like, oh man, yeah, he sucked. I hate that guy.
Yeah, well, listen, even if there are guys, if there is anyone in the group, it's not Blake Wheeler. I mean, like, he's the last guy that would be, because, I think they've been in lockstep with so many, and I think Wheeler's a big influence on Maurice as well. I mean, the way that those two work together, you can tell the respect between the two. So that was interesting. We'll talk more about Wheeler's comments with Hamliton a little bit later on. But let's get to Pierre Luc Dubois. I know many of you were wondering whether we would, hear that Pierre Luc Dubois was playing hurt. And I think a lot of people wanted to hear that, wanted to have some sort of an explanation why his playoff, and especially this round in the absence of Mark Scheifele, was so underwhelming. But, to Dubois' credit, he didn't make any excuses when it comes to injuries. Talked about somewhat of a rough start and, a season with plenty of ups and downs after his first trade in the NHL.
No, I'm not hurt. I mean, I'm as hurt as anybody, bruises and scratches and stuff like that. But, nothing major that, affecting my game. Yeah, and then the playoffs, for the second part of your question, I guess. I'm someone who expects a lot from myself, and I'll be the first guy to say that I didn't play how I should have. I didn't play how I thought I could and how I know I can. It was a disappointing year for me. It was a lot of ups and downs. But there's the only person to blame is me. It wasn't easy, but like Scheif said, in life there's setbacks. This summer is going to be a big, important summer to get ready for next season, next training camp, and to get it going when we're back.
Go back to Paul Friesen for a follow-up. Go ahead, Paul.
I'm just wondering what you attribute it to, Pierre Luc. I know you had the tough start where you had to quarantine, and did it just never get on track for you after that, or is there something else?
To be honest, it's when I look back at this year in the future, I'm gonna look back and think that there's not much I didn't go through. From the 2-week quarantine, coming back, getting injured, then playing. We didn't have a lot of practices, so kind of hard to get in that rhythm. It wasn't easy when you get to a new team. You want to fit in. You want it to be the perfect fit. For me, it was kind of hard finding what that was. I had a hard time, trying to find what I can do. Like I said, it's at the end of the day, it's our job to be the best players we can be and to help the team win. And it was hard for me this year to adjust. Given a factor, many reasons I think, but at the end of the day, you only have yourself to blame. And I know I can be better. I can be a lot better. This year was my 4th year in the NHL, and I'm really happy with my first 3 years. And 1 year doesn't define you. And my confidence of who I am and what I can do, don't change just because of one disappointing season.
There's Pierre Luc Dubois, and Reem, I'll give Pierre a lot of credit. Pierre Luc a lot of credit for what he said. That's not an easy question to answer, and I'm sure he's been thinking about it nonstop, and I'm sure it's been keeping him up at night as to what has gone wrong this season. Not to mention, the amount of pressure that increased on his shoulders when Mark Scheifele went out. As I mentioned, it was a huge opportunity for Dubois to erase a lot of the things that happened earlier in this season. And then it almost went from bad to worse. And we talked about him ending up on the 4th line in game number 4 at one point after starting on the top line. So, there were some miserable times for Pierre Luc Dubois, I think, overall. But I will say this. I appreciated his attitude. And, I've said before, at times, there hasn't been a lot of accountability at times, at least publicly. I don't know what happens behind closed doors. But he did, in the end, put it on himself and said that he needs to, go back, work his ass off this summer, come back a better player, put this one in the rear view, and deliver to the Winnipeg Jets organization what they were looking for when they traded Laine and Roslovic to get him here to the Peg.
Yeah, he really struggled. We were waiting for something from him, for the last 20 games or so where he went goalless, 22 games, and we never saw that. And we were waiting for him to step up in the playoffs, and he didn't. And I see Gilbert and Chet saying everyone gives him a pass. Joke, we're not giving him a we said he was terrible. He said he got demoted to the 4th line.
And I'll tell you what, and I think in some ways he's sort of been singled out for this series against Montreal. And part of it, as I mentioned, the minute Scheifele went out, the pressure on Dubois to step up and perform at the center position, which was what they got him for, was cranked up tenfold. And then then nothing happened. Although I do have a hard time with so many people focusing on a Dubois in the Montreal series. He wasn't very good, but man, he had a lot of company in that department when you go down the list of Jet forwards and the lack of production. And listen, there was a lot that went into it. Certainly the problems the Jets had in their own end played into it. They had such a difficult time even getting the puck out of their own end. It is, it's unrealistic to expect that you're going to be able to create the offense that you normally do, having the puck so little. But certainly the forwards played into that as well. And a lot of times in situations like this, people want to have a scapegoat. They want to have one guy that they can point to. And listen, it's part of being a professional athlete. And we knew that when Dubois came here, traded for Patrik Laine, there would be, an incredible amount of scrutiny on this young man. And things didn't go well for him. And that is why you have questions like this. But I will say this, Reem, he is just 22 years old. I mean, I think it's insane for people to sort of write off Pierre Luc Dubois. And, he wasn't very good against the Montreal Canadiens, but there's not a lot of guys that really were, to be perfectly honest with you. But I understand why he gets the attention right now, especially considering the way the season ended.
Yeah, I'm of the belief, Huss, that if you display a skill, you own that skill. So we know what he's capable of. And I've heard a lot of GMs say, and I think, in other sports too, we saw this in baseball last year. I mean, if you had a rough year this year, I think teams are willing to give you a pass. But we know that it was challenging and strange, not for just NHL players, for everyone. So if you had a tough year, I think next year is the time to rebound. So I'm not out on him. I want, give him next year. Let's see what he can do. Obviously, very disappointing. And, he didn't look like a player you would trade a Patrik Laine for. But, I mean, Laine also had a tough year on the other side as well. So I think, again, this is a trade we're going to be talking about for a while. I'm not going to say that he's a terrible player going forward, but I'm not going to say, we'll wait. I'm going to say we'll wait.
Everyone knows the Jets need way more from Pierre Luc Dubois, and that will need to be the case. And to be honest with you, they're probably saying the same thing in Columbus right now. Pretty amazing the way that trade worked out or didn't work out for both clubs so far this season. We're going to hear from Mark Scheifele in a second. Do want to thank Not AutoCorp for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk from day one. First group that came on and said, we want you guys to do this and we want to support you. And it's great to see so many people supporting Not AutoCorp. Incredible selection of vehicles, including Teslas, beautiful sports cars, SUVs, you name it, they have it. Not to mention an incredible consignment program to help you get max value for your present vehicle or get out of a lease and move in to the car of your dreams with the Not team. They'll also fix your car if you need it. They'll detail it. They will do it all. Not AutoCorp, Waverly and McGillivray, or find out more online at their website at not.ca. Why not? And thinking of why not crack an ice cold little brown jug after you're finished working today? May I suggest the incredible new summer lager? There's the can, as well as the very popular new Hefeweizen. As I said, it doesn't look see-through. Doesn't look see-through when you do it that way. 1919, you can see them all there. And as I've been telling you for the last week or so, they recently relaunched their website at littlebrownjug.ca, making it easier than ever to pop on, order your favorite Little Brown Jug products, and get them delivered directly to your home. Get ready for the weekend, or maybe even a little earlier this week, by going to littlebrownjug.ca, getting your favorite products, and they will deliver them to you. And of course, Breezy Bend Country Club, we do have another tournament this week on tour leading into next week's U.S. Open. Cannot wait for that. I've been getting some pictures from Breezy over the last few days of some of my buddies that have gone out and either played with their girlfriends because they can't play with anyone they don't live with, or a few solo rounds. And my God, the course is looking absolutely mint. Cannot wait to get out there. If you're thinking about an incredible golf home for your family next year, find out more at breezybend.ca or give Corey Johnson a call. Get you on the waiting list for Manitoba's premier club for the entire family. And you can spend a little time on an amazing 19th hole patio as well over at Breezy Bend. All right. Jeff Hamliton is going to join us in just a second. Remote, before we bring Jeff in, I do want to play, maybe we won't play the entire Mark Scheifele bit, but let's play clip number 4. It was a very interesting little back and forth with Scheifele in the media today. And this kind of goes back to the nobody believed in us mantra that we heard from Wheeler and some Jets going into the series against Edmonton. Here's Mark Scheifele from this morning in his media availability to end the season with the Jets.
Naturally, people always ask questions about the coach when a team maybe doesn't get to where people think they should be. What are your thoughts on Paul Maurice as your coach this season and going forward?
Well, first of all, you say, a team that, you guys wrote us off from the beginning. you know, you guys, the media, you know, had us not making the playoffs, being a bottom feeder in the league. So, you know, that's where, you know, you guys get caught, you know, contradicting your guys' selves all the time. So, you know, you guys didn't have any hope for this team from day one. And I think we proved you guys wrong all season long. You know, we made the playoffs. We swept the Edmonton Oilers. We went to the second round in the playoffs. You know, obviously didn't end the way we wanted to, but, you know, I have full support in Paul Maurice, and I know I'm not alone there. You know, there's a lot of guys that love him. He's a fantastic coach. You know, he's definitely one of the good ones in this league, and, you know, he definitely has my full support. And, you know, that's, you know, what happened in Toronto. You know, that's learning lessons. That's coaching. That's, you know, a player, you know, I'm a guy that loves to learn. I'm a guy that loves to improve my game. And I want the coach to push me. I want my peers to push me. You know, that's what makes good teams. That's what makes, you know, that's what bonds, you know, relationships is, you know, your peers, you know, the forms of authority pushing you for more and pushing you for better. And that's, you know, that's hockey. That's the business we're in. You want to be pushed to be better. You want to be pushed to be a better person, a better player, you know, a more hardworking player, you know, everything in this world, you want to be pushed to want more. And, you know, that only motivates you. That only motivates me as a person. And, you know, that's the way I look at every setback, at every good thing, at every bad thing. You know, you never can get too high. You never can get too low. You just have to keep pushing for more. And, you know, I thought this team pushed for more. You know, we were written off from day one of this season. You know, we have you know, that's about it. We were written off from day one, and we proved people wrong all season long. And, you know, we go through that slide, you know, towards the end of the year, and we were written off again. You know, everyone wanted a Calgary Flames Edmonton Oilers series. And, you know, we proved people wrong. We made the playoffs. We won our first round. And, you know, I think that's where my head's at, is that, you know, we prove people wrong, and we want to continue to prove people wrong. You know, we don't get a lot of respect in you know, the grand scheme of things. You know, everyone wants the, you know, Toronto Maple Leafs and the Edmonton Oilers, and the Montreal Canadiens to be going on. No one wants the Winnipeg Jets to do anything, but, you know, that's what Winnipeg is made of. You know, our community is made of hardworking people that grind for every inch. And, you know, we're that team that wants to grind for every inch and prove people wrong on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, that's who the Winnipeg Jets are.
All right, so there's Mark Scheifele, and I gotta say, I kind of love that. I don't know how based in truth much of what Mark Scheifele had to say. I love the way he ended it. He seems like a pretty angry young man right now, and I can imagine it must have been. I mean, there's a lot of things that he's questioning about what happened. Well, listen, he's still pretty steadfast that he doesn't think he did anything wrong, and he thinks he got screwed by an NHL player safety. I think some of that came in. But I'm always here for a Winnipeg versus everybody story. So, but I did somewhat laugh at the categorizations that the entire media had written the Jets off from the start. Well, let's find out more from one of those media members that wrote the Jets off right from day one and never believed in them for a second. Jeff Hamliton from the Winnipeg Free Press. Hammer, what's up? What did you think about that from Scheifele this morning?
I'm with you in the sense that, yeah, I mean, great. I mean, love the passion, you know, I mean, he's a self-proclaimed worst loser out there. And, you know, I wrote a profile on him a few years back, and that's pretty much what it was based on. So, I mean, his comments aren't crazy surprising. I mean, there were a lot of people that wrote the Jets off, you know, fairly or unfairly. You know, I'm with you, Huss, in the sense that I don't think it's completely accurate. And I'm not sure, you know, when they say media, you know, especially when Mark goes on about like everyone wants the Edmonton Oilers, the Montreal Canadiens, the Toronto Maple Leafs, while he's obviously talking out of province, right? Yeah. So we're talking about a guy who's mad at like the Hockey Night in Canada panel or the TSN panels and look at their predictions. And I'm not saying there weren't locals, but from my understanding or my remembering, I think we all had the Jets kind of hovering at that fourth position. Now, nobody was confident that they were going to be some juggernaut like they had been in previous seasons. But if you looked at the 2020 year, the Jets got in the playoffs because of points percentages, not because they were really good, and they didn't do anything really to their back end to improve. So a lot of people thought they would be hovering around that position in the, you know, in the bubble. And then when you took into consideration what Montreal was able to do last year, you know, and the fact that they were going to be playing in an all-Canadian division, I think a lot of people had the Jets at the 4, you know, at that 4 spot, maybe the 5th spot, maybe just on the outside looking in or just getting in. I know that my predictions was they were going to be 4th with a tough time kind of being that bubble team, which I think, you know, yes, they ended 3, but they were kind of exactly that. And then ultimately in the playoffs, they impressed, and then they, you know, the wheels fell off. I will say one thing, though, about Marks that I completely agree with, and that's Winnipeggers being hardworking, grinding for every inch. I just don't think the Winnipeg Jets did that against the Montreal Canadiens.
No, you're exactly right. And yeah, listen, the end of that was amazing. I mean, that is in wrestling jargon, that's the old thing. And we do it all here for the good people of Winnipeg. And you get the big pop from the crowd. I mean, I think fans were there for that. But, you know, that sort of anger, frustration, determination, regardless of where it is directed at, you know, I think can, you know, hopefully only be a good thing for a team that, I mean, and especially for a player, Jeff, that, you know, is not going to be in the home opener or not going to be in the opening game of next year. I mean, he's going to have to sit on this throughout the entire season, the entire off season, get to training camp, and probably still deal with it as well, going in and finally playing in game 2. The one thing I'll say is, I mean, Scheifele overall, and I know we don't really talk about the season because there's so much a focus on the playoffs and what had happened. I will give him credit. I thought he had a really good season. I mean, I know there was some moments, and we've talked about getting benched in Toronto, that weren't highlights for him. But overall, I really do think he took a big step forward. And I think it's a big reason why the Jets were able to do what they did. You know, and especially, I got to give him a lot of credit in that entire line. And I know there's been a lot of talk about Wheeler in this season. I thought Wheeler was phenomenal in the first round, doing everything that they needed to do. And I think Mark Scheifele really rose to that challenge. And listen, I know he was only there for the one game and wasn't part of the rest of the series against Montreal, but that, I think, they're going to need that and then some, and Mark Scheifele continue to develop going forward. But I really do think that there was a lot of good to take out of this season, specifically for 55.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, there were certain things that I think, you know, he certainly didn't have a bad season. I'll agree with you. He had a pretty good season. I think the expectations on Mark Scheifele need to be higher beyond just points, because there's a hierarchy on this team that is impenetrable. Like, the leash that Blake Wheeler has, the leash that Mark Scheifele have, they're really, really long. They're going to get their opportunities. If they're not getting a point in a game, it's kind of like, well, why not? You're getting, you know, no one has more ice time than Mark Scheifele forward. Nobody is getting over the bench quicker on the power play. You know, so he's going to have to get points. The thing that's so missing in Mark Scheifele's game, and at this point, you got to start wondering if it's ever going to be there, you know, and maybe it's not fair. I think it's fair, is for him to be a driver, you know, someone to take over games. And as much as he contributed in, you know, in the regular season points wise, I don't think you can point back to a ton of games where it was like that was Mark Scheifele taking over. So, you know, there's still a step in his game that I believe is still there. It's still going to, you know, possibly still going to come. You know, it was a unique season, everything considered, with COVID and the challenges that come with that. And obviously, Mark Scheifele is a player this team missed in that second round.
Well, yeah, Jeff, you know, just speaking of it, I mean, maybe the best argument that Mark Scheifele absolutely is a driver is what they looked like when Mark Scheifele wasn't in the lineup.
Well, you know, it's interesting, right? You know, obviously Mark Scheifele was a big piece of that, but Paul Stastny wasn't in early on, and neither was Dylan DeMello on a defense that desperately needed him. So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily make that argument that he's a driver. I'd make that argument that he's a key contributor in the sense that he adds up the points. But, you know, in that situation, I think the defense was in a really bad spot with Dylan DeMello being out because, and very much like Mark Scheifele being out, the trickle effect is it's just damning, right? I mean, if you look at the lineup, you know, this team claimed to be more mature, that they could get through the adversity that they suffered last playoffs, that, you know, a couple guys out of the lineup wasn't a big issue and all that. Clearly that's not the case, because, you know, when you have a situation with Mark, he's your top line center. Pierre Luc Dubois gets promoted to that for a spell. He does next to nothing essentially. And then you got to put somebody else up on there. Andrew Kopp, to me, is a very solid player. I thought he had a great great year, regular season in particular. I don't think he's a qualified top 6 centerman. I think he plays well on the wing. I dub him as a centerman's assistant, if you will, because we know how great he is, on the defensive side of the game and helping out players like Mark Scheifele who aren't as good in their own zone defensively. So that's nothing against him. I just think it's a tough spot to then him be your number 2 centerman. The defense, though, I think it was an absolute crapshoot once Dylan DeMello came out. I mean, the defense was already this team's weak point. Now to have guys put in, no offense to Jordy Ben, but, he's getting up there in age. He wasn't playing a lot of hockey, and he gets inserted because DeMello's out. So, I think that's the biggest issue with the Jets right now, because there's a trickling effect with all that, right? I mean, you have the goaltender that's gonna iron out some of those wrinkles, as we saw in round 1. And then, but the defense, it starts in their own zone. It starts with breaking out the puck. The Jets were absolutely horrendous at breaking the puck out in the playoffs, particularly in that second round. The neutral zone game has been eliminated with the fact that the defense aren't able to get clean breakouts. They aren't able to take advantage of that space between the blue lines. And then the scoring. I mean, yes, Logan Stanley had 2 goals. That was incredible for the Winnipeg Jets. Unfortunately, they can't get it done in overtime, but they weren't getting a lot of offense from it because the defense can't close the gaps quick enough. They're almost kind of playing too cautious. So I think this team, and I know these players do not like, and part of let's get something clear. Part of Mark Scheifele's angst is having to get asked questions about the hit again, having to, share those feelings and opinions. And a lot of these guys on this team don't like hard questions. That's a fact. So a lot of these things, kind of add up. But at the end of the day, I think the frustration with this team and the team, if you start looking at questions on what you do moving forward, it's addressing that defensive part of the game. And maybe it's going to cost you a couple guys up front to get that done.
All right, Jeff, we've got an interesting question from the YouTube chat from a Hef Hamliton.
Oh, yeah.
Hef Hamliton, welcome. Remo and I talked about, we heard from Pierre Luc Dubois and talked about his season and what we had to say. I mean, Hef would like to know just thoughts on Dubois, the ups and more downs of him, the way this season ended, and how integral he will be going forward and how important it is to get him to be the player they thought they were getting when they traded Laine for him.
Yeah, it's massive because who knows what happens with Mark Scheifele in a couple of years, right? When his contract is up, he might be looking for a payday somewhere else. I mean, that's just the reality of this league. I do think, when the first part of the question, I believe, was, I think he had obviously a tough year coming in. I mean, I don't know if it's easy to quite understand where we're sitting or where the average fan is sitting of taking 2 weeks off in season, then having to get up to speed with a new team and all that stuff, then getting injured early on. And then, but, by the end of it, you'd like to think that he'd figure things out. If you're the Winnipeg Jets or you're a fan of the Winnipeg Jets, you're desperately hoping that this was a one-off for Pierre Luc Dubois because, as we know, I mean, you ship Patrik Laine the other way, and, there was a very, Laine was obviously a polarizing player. I think a lot of people appreciated, obviously, his abilities and particularly his ability to score. So when you replace a guy like that, there are heavy expectations. And when all you're hearing about is how dominant he was in the playoffs the year before against the Toronto Maple Leafs as a member of the Columbus Blue Jackets, when you've actually been able to see some of the positive things he's done, the expectations remain high. And I think he kind of alluded to it in his interview this morning, and he's alluded to it in previous interviews, just about, I think there is an effort from him trying to do too much, right? Like, I think he tried to be that player that everyone had been talking about. A lot of the conversation, part of it at least, was talking about how Pierre Luc Dubois might even become the number 1 centerman and perhaps by the end of the year, and Mark Scheifele would be bumped down. Obviously, that's not how it turned out. Now, beyond the thing about hoping that maybe it's a one-off, we do need to kind of understand this kid's 22 years old, and he's still kind of growing into his game in a lot of ways. The other thing, too, is I don't think he handles that pressure very well. I mean, he can claim to put the most pressure on himself. I'm sure that's the case. But, when things got hot, he just seemed to even get colder and colder, right? Like, he never really found his footing. He never really found that confidence. He didn't score a goal in a bunch of games, obviously. So, there's going to be a lot of question marks for him, but you like to hear him say this offseason is going to be a big, important one. And as we've said this before, Huss, is like, there is an ability to flip the script. A lot of people, you have to carry that into your offseason. You have to make sure that motivates you, that you are putting in the work. And I'm sure he is. There's no doubt in my mind he is. He's 22 years old as well. So he's going to be 23 this year. He's not young, but he's certainly not old. So there is a lot of time for him. Let's just assume he puts in a good offseason and you know, he's capable of turning the script next year.
Jeff Hamliton from the Winnipeg Free Press with us today on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily, wrapping up garbage bag day from the Winnipeg Jets after hearing from some of the players. Sounds like we'll hear from Coach Paul Maurice and General Manager Kevin Cheveldayoff tomorrow, which will be very interesting. And needless to say, I mean, there was a bunch of questions for the players. There'll be questions for the coach and the general manager. From your perspective, Jeff, I mean, if let's just say you're the top dog in the organization, you're the final decision maker, Mark Chipman, and you look at what's happened with this team. Is the scrutiny on the performance of the players? Is the scrutiny on the coaching staff that's been here with this group for a long time, or the long-serving general manager? Where do you start with this group as far as evaluating? If you're going to make a change or tweak something, is there one of those three aspects that stands out above the others to you?
In a word, yes. All of them. I honestly don't think there is a, you know, which is the first one you address. I think this team top to bottom, whether it's the players, obviously this is something you do every offseason with expiring contracts, finding out who's valuable, what your team makeup is going to be. But it has to extend obviously to the coaching staff and upwards to general manager Kevin Cheveldayoff. I mean, each area that you mentioned wears this. I mean, where were the Winnipeg, like what team did we see in the second round? I mean, this was a team who clearly, like, I mean, I'll just say it. This is a very mentally thin-skinned team, because when they were the underdogs and everybody was claiming that they were going to get swept by the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers are so good. They had to answer, 100 questions about Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. They took the chip on their shoulder. They used it, and they almost beat the Oilers out of spite. Now, they didn't beat them easily. As we know, 3 of those games went into overtime, and that first game had a couple empty netters. It was essentially a 1-goal game. Flip the script going into the next series, and no longer is it you against the world. In fact, you're the favorites. Everyone's buzzing. Everyone's talking about how good the Jets are, that, holy smokes, were we wrong about those predictions, that the Edmonton Oilers are dust compared to the Winnipeg Jets. And then once you no longer had anyone to point at and say, oh, they're giving us flack or they're counting us out, you get swept by a team who went 7 games against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, that series to me exposed every single one of those areas. The players, obviously, they didn't even look like they had systems. Now, I'm not pretending to be an X's and O, put me in the seat. You're allowing me to opine about these things, but I think it was pretty easy to watch that the Jets couldn't get out of their own zone. They couldn't generate speed out of the neutral zone. They couldn't get sustained pressure in the offensive zone, and they couldn't score. So something's got to give. That screams systems, which then goes to the head coach. I mean, it's great that these guys are willing to stand behind Paul Maurice, and Paul Maurice is a very, very good man. There is no doubt about it. He is a nice human being, and that's a value in professional sports, particularly in this era. When you have younger kids coming in, that kind of tough love no longer exists. That existed in Paul Maurice earlier in his career, and he's learned over time how to evolve and handle these younger players, and that, again, is a very important asset. But if you can't implement the systems and get the players to do the system, it doesn't matter if they sing your praises. What matters is that they're doing their job. So if you need to bring in, an ass to come in here and force these guys to do their systems, and they don't feel, all warm and good at the end of the day, so be it. I mean, there has to be a balance there. So there has to be held accountable. And then you go one step further and you look at the Jets and what they were able to do, in that first round. And then you ask yourself, well, why didn't the Jets get the D-man that they needed? Now, it's easier said than done to deliver, but that's still your job as the general manager, to look at the situation. And look how frustrated Kevin Cheveldayoff was when he couldn't get that D-man, right? I mean, he knew he had an opportunity with this team that if he could find another, not a Jordy Ben, obviously, no offense to Jordy Ben. It's not his fault that he got, traded to the Winnipeg Jets and was used as, that safety piece, if you will. But you didn't get the guy. And so you felt like you had the team and you swung and missed. So there's a consequence there. At the end of the day, we have a team that's been here for 10 years, a head coach that's been here for what, 7 or 8 of those, 7 of those years, and a GM that's been here for all of them, and you have one run. You have one run that you end up getting beat by an expansion team in the Western Conference Final. That was an exciting run for the Winnipeg Jets. Since then, it's kind of just been like, up and down, mostly down, a little bit up here, and then, you know, it was what it was in the second round against the Habs.
Yeah, well, you know, listen, winning ain't easy in the National Hockey League. And, you know, there's only 8 teams that got to the second round of the 31 that were playing this year. So, I mean, it's not like they didn't accomplish anything or didn't do anything. And I think, you know, in some ways they did exceed the expectations of a lot of people. I mean, maybe they're a playoff team. Let's face it. Nobody had them running through the Edmonton Oilers like they did. And I know it was a very close series, but at the end, I mean, it's who won the games and who didn't. Winnipeg won 4, Edmonton won 0. But the complete reversal on that as favorites against the Habs is, you know, it's sort of erased so much of like what they did in the first round. Now to be sitting here having these conversations, as I said, it was very similar to the regular season, and that, you know, the first 2/3 of the year, they were winning their close games. They were doing a lot of things that, you know, separate winning and losing on a thin margin. Connor Hellebuyck was great in their 13 games over 500. Well, the last month of the season was a disaster, and, you know, it seemed very urgent to get things together. Now, to their credit, they got it done, played very well the way they needed to play. I give Maurice a lot of credit for the message, the plan going into the Edmonton series, and it worked and they won. But the way things fell apart during Montreal, it's very similar to what happened. It was great that you did all that good stuff in the first 2/3 of the season, but in the final month, when you lose 9 of 10 and 7 in a row, and then that reemerges with an opportunity to make it to the Final Four, definitely concerning. And that's, I think, why, Jeff, when you hear the message from the players, you know, we love Paul, the message is the same, we all believe in it. Well, it's one thing from kind of buying in and another thing from actually doing it on the ice. And that's the real disconnect, I think, even from people that are big supporters of Paul and what he's done and the man that he is and what he means to the organization. I think you might have more people considering, you know, maybe we're just at the end of the run for this group together. And listen, you can make an argument that's not necessarily the coach, but I think that if you come back and keep running it back with the general manager the same, the coach and the coaching staff the same, and Blake Wheeler the captain, and Mark Scheifele the assistant, and those guys being the epicenter of everything Winnipeg Jets, I'm not sure we should expect different results, even if you can add a little bit more on the blue line or something like that.
Yeah, you know, I think that's a fair statement, Huss. I mean, you never know. I mean, maybe they're trying to do what the Bombers did in the sense that let's stick with this group and it's just around the corner.
Good point.
I think that conversation needs, or I think that's obviously something being decided upon by, you know, ownership and Mark Chipman. Are we close? Are we, you know, there's a lot of things that the Winnipeg Jets need to, you know, need to figure out before they just fire their head coach, right? I mean, the Jets really are a team that you can't sell your car until you bought a new one. So you need to have, like, you know, you can't just get rid of a coach like Paul Maurice and then just hope to find one on the market. You kind of need to, you kind of need to have an agreement with someone or a good understanding that someone would come over and that they gel well with your team, right? Because of that, because of how fondly some of the players, particularly the Blake Wheelers and the Mark Scheifeles and the guys who are logging a ton of the minutes and pretty much dictate what goes on in that room, if you bring in a guy that they don't appreciate or they don't respect, or add to the fact that you lost a guy that they did, I think you can put yourself in a difficult situation. I think you might even be able to, you know, because let's face it, like Blake Wheeler has a lot of say in that room. You know, what if a new coach comes in and doesn't want to build around Blake? And I think that's a big thing that the Jets need to consider is, you know, Blake Wheeler played through injuries, not very well, but he got upset the fact that, you know, we were wondering why he was playing 20 plus minutes with cracked ribs and wasn't, you know, willing to go to any of the dirty areas. And then when he got healthy, he played a little bit better. But, you know, the reality is that there's going to be a coach that's going to want to come in and get online or do their own thing with this team. The other part is the head coach has to be on the same page as Kevin Cheveldayoff and Mark Chipman, because Mark Chipman's also a very involved person in the day-to-day of the Winnipeg Jets. So it's a bit of an interesting situation with this club that you can't just get rid of a guy. So, you know, there's a lot of things that are going to play into it. Personally, if you were to ask me what happens next year, I think you're going to see exactly the same thing. I don't think Paul Maurice is gone. I think there's enough for the ownership to justify keep bringing him back in the sense of they won that first series when everyone counted them out. You know, Mark Scheifele being essentially eliminated from that series after game one. That will probably play into the decision making. So, or at least kind of ease off some of the bad play in that second round. But I'm with you. Like, I mean, unless there's a bit of a change here, or unless, you know, I really do think that there isn't a lot of room to grow for some of these players, because I feel like some of the top 6 minutes are clogged up and we're not able to see, you know, the potential of some of these guys. You know, like Mason Appleton had to do it on a checking role. You know, we saw with Jack Roslovic, and I know, you know, I'm not suggesting that Jack Roslovic was some kind of hidden gem per se, but we saw him excel with more ice time, and it just seems like under.
Listen, we can talk about some of these guys. You know, the Appleton, so I thought was great, that, you know, maybe deserved a shot at some point up. But I mean, the guy we need to be talking about is Nikolaj Ehlers, because I mean, Nikolaj Ehlers this year undoubtedly, I think, was a guy that made the most happen individually as a Winnipeg Jet up front. Certainly, if you look at all the numbers, points per minute, his production, right at the top of the list. And let's face it, he did that with almost no top line minutes and no top line power play. And you would think that regardless of who is the head coach next year, that Nikolaj Ehlers moves into a much more prominent role on the top line. It would seem insane not to do that from my perspective.
Well, it kind of speaks to my point there, Huss, is like, yeah, and I've been banging the drum all year, essentially, that Nick Ehlers is the true, you know, game breaker on this team. He's the guy that's proven that he can turn a game on its head, you know, in a quick wrist shot or coming across the blue line and scoring. Like, he scored impressive game-breaking goals this season in that, you know, if you want to call it a, you know, a backup role as a second line, and the backup role on a second power play. Now, I think there's an understanding to why he's in those roles. It's because there's an expectation amongst the Blake Wheelers and Mark Scheifele to be the top line and to play together. They saw the chemistry that they had with Kyle Connor, and, you know, we've heard Blake say things like advocating for players to come back and saying we need this guy, and you know, we've heard Paul Maurice say the exact same thing about Blake Wheeler, and that he put his arm around Kyle Connor and said, let's play with, you know, bring the kid on the line, and the rest is kind of history. So we have players calling the shots in that room, and that speaks to the power play as well. You understand what position that Nick Ehlers plays on the power play, right? It's the shooting position. So unless Mark Scheifele wants to move over and allow Nick Ehlers to take that spot, or if Blake Wheeler wants to move over and allow him to take that shooting spot, there is no shooting spot for Nick Ehlers. So it's interesting thing.
But I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, it can't be like, do you want to move? Do you want to move?
Well,
I mean, that sort of has to be the coach saying, this is what's in the best interest of the hockey team.
Exactly, but that isn't what it is. Like, it isn't like, you know what I mean? There's been elements, and I'm not saying that Blake Wheeler isn't a team guy. You got to remember here that he's played center before, a position that's way tougher for him on his body and the style of the way he plays. But when it comes to certain things, there's just no budging on it. And the other thing is, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with him not being on the first. I think that power play in a lot of respects should be the first in some cases, in the sense that because you have Nick Ehlers on the team, because it's built around him and they're built around shooting and chaos.
Well, and I would offer that they have their best power play defenseman on that unit too, in Neil Pionk.
Absolutely. So, like, you could, and I think it stretches there. They were the first off the boards, right? So I'm definitely jumping on here with you that, you know, I think Nick Ehlers is appreciated in that locker room for sure. Oh, yeah. He's certainly appreciated, you know, by people outside that locker room. It's just when you see a guy that's buzzing as well as he's been buzzing, you'd think that he'd be kind of handed a little bit more responsibility, and in this case, ice time.
Hey, let me ask you this. Let's look ahead to tomorrow. What do you expect to hear from Maurice and Cheveldayoff about this season? I mean, will it be focusing on, you know, some of the good things that happened, that they made the playoffs, that they were able to beat Edmonton, and not as much about how things fell apart against Montreal? Will it be more about the future going forward? I mean, what are you expecting to hear first from the coach?
Positives. Like, I mean, I think it's going to be all optics, right? Because you have a bunch of players on the Winnipeg Jets that are pissed off, that are angry with how the season went. The last thing they want to hear is their coach dragging their season or their GM dragging their season. So I think you're going to see a lot of, you know, I thought we grew in our game. I think you'll see a bit of that. You know, people counted us out. Nobody had the Winnipeg. And I don't think, certainly not going to be similar to the way Mark Scheifele handled it, but I think those messages are going to be there. If you've noticed in post-game, guys, like sometimes Blake will say something or Mark will say something or anyone will say something, and then Paul Maurice will say it in his final interview. So there are certain talking points here. I think this isn't the time for the coach. Like, I want the players to come out and say, we didn't do the job. Okay, I want them to come out and say, we weren't good enough. I don't want to hear them say the Montreal Canadiens were so good that we couldn't play as well as we hoped to play. The coach, yes, you'd like to call them whatever in this situation after a game, but in this situation, postseason, like, I don't think they need to come out and say this guy wasn't good or whatever, blah, blah, blah. You kind of want that accountability on the players. Now, I think Paul Maurice might come out and say something like, okay, you know, I have to take ownership of this. And I think he probably will, in that, you know, he didn't have his team prepared enough, yada, yada, yada. But I just don't think there's going to be, you know, I think it's going to be a lot about what they did right and less about what they did wrong.
We'll have a lot of time to talk about this in the off season, but I'll just quickly ask you this. What Winnipeg Jets do you think played their last game here on in Game 4?
Oh, man. Who played their last? I'm not going to make any definitive statements. Like, I think this guy's gone. I mean, I'm absolutely intrigued to see what Andrew Kopp does this year, because the thing about the massive difference, obviously, between this year and when he had his arbitration was he didn't get the opportunities that he's gotten here in the last couple of years. So you kind of hope, if you're a Jets fan, that he kind of, you know, enjoys the fact that he's viewed in this organization as a top 6 player, that he's got an opportunity. Obviously, it's going to go down to dollars and cents. I think he's a guy that's going to be sought after to a certain degree. I mean, he's not going to be a high free agent, but just given his price range, if you can get him in around $4 million or so, you know, I think there's going to be an appetite for other teams. So I think it's just going to be natural, especially if you're American. I think there's a tendency to look at playing on that side of the border. I think there's an element of COVID and what that might play into next year. We've heard Andrew talk about, you know, his colleagues south of the border and what their lives have looked like. So depending on how COVID reacts, let's all assume, hopefully, that everything's kind of back to normal by next season. But, you know, Paul Stastny is another guy. I mean, he's getting late in his career. I wonder if he would be willing to take a haircut, or if maybe he's looking for a different opportunity somewhere else, or if he's looking to cash in on another contract, because he played pretty well with the Winnipeg Jets for the most part. But I can't really think of too many guys that I'd be overly concerned about necessarily leaving. I feel like you got a handful of guys that are under contract, and if you do want to build your defense a little bit, I wonder what some of the bargaining chips might be available. So it's not so much everyone out the door that, you know, is on an expiring contract, but, you know, people who are secured with this team and what their immediate future might look like is interesting.
Jeff Hamilton of the Free Press with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Give him a follow on Twitter at Jeff K. Hamilton. And for everyone that's with us, great to have you with us live on YouTube. Make sure you hit that like button and the red subscribe button and join us daily at 1 o'clock if you haven't already. And if you're listening to the podcast, rate and review if you would. 5 stars, something nice about the boys on WST would be greatly appreciated. Before we go, a complete pivot to the CFL for a minute. There's a vote coming up on the 14th of June. What are you hearing? How optimistic should fans be that the CFL, at least, we'll see what happens with the virus and everything, but that there will be a commitment from the CFL teams that there will be a season, hopefully starting on the 5th of August?
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm going to take the glass half full approach here. You know, what I've been hearing from different teams is that everything's heading in the right direction. There's a lot of which is massively important, is there's a lot of dialogue between teams and players, particularly around vaccinations, how to get them, the importance of getting them, all those things. As we know, the CFL is kind of holding prisoner more to the pandemic than any other league. So those are massive things, as long as they can get that going, and they have been getting that going in the last few weeks. And everyone seems to think this is going to be a good thing. I mean, you need to have significant amount of fans. We've seen the different provinces, Alberta being one of them. There's a couple others that are saying there's going to be lots of fans. So the CFL has been flexible in how they're going to approach the schedule. They're going to start out mostly in the West and see what they can do from there. But I'm certainly optimistic of the August 5th start. I'm not putting down a guarantee by any stretch here, but I will say this. I think there is a massive chance, if not 100, then 99.9% chance that CFL football will be played sometime in 2021.
That's what we like to hear, Jeff. I'm with you. Fingers are crossed. We'll get through this vote, see how things are opening up. I mean, it is sort of funny with this here in Winnipeg and Manitoba, in that we can pretty much guarantee that no matter, like, if we're, I wonder how things are going to be over there, I wonder how things are going to be over here, we're going to be the last ones to the party, I think. So if we can get our act together and get going forward and get to a spot where whatever the rules are, if you have to have the double vax shot or whatever, you can actually get into the park. I think the rest of Canada at that point will already be ready to welcome fans in. And as we all know, that is, the lack of any revenue for CFL teams. It was a deal breaker last year, and I'd imagine it would be a deal breaker again today. But it does seem like there's optimism that there will be some butts in seats, regardless of what the rules are around it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, when we can get back to I was saying to Regina Radio yesterday, when we get back, you'll know it's been normal when there's a high stakes game going on at Mosaic Stadium and the Blue Bombers arrive and they wipe the floor with them. So that's when we'll know we're kind of back to being normal. But thanks for having me on, Huss. I always appreciate coming on. Same to the comment section. I don't get to read you when I'm on this part. I love being part of the comment section. So
you've inspired a new commenter, Hef Hamliton.
Well, he's who knows? Maybe it's me. I'm just typing on my other computer over here. But no, I appreciate everybody, and we can handle the negative comments. So that's the beauty part about being in this job. So positive, negative, whatever it is, great to talk sports, and hopefully we can get back to a new normal sooner than later.
No doubt. Well, I'll tell you what, we still have a ton of Jets news to talk about. It's going to be a really interesting offseason. And the fact of the matter is, Jeff, normally this would be the time they'd be giving out the cup. We're going to get through these 2 rounds of playoffs. We're going to be well into January. Boom. Expansion draft, entry draft, free agency. And then you'll have like a month, and then boom, it's going to be time to get after it in September and hopefully start a regular 82-game season back the way we remember before this damn virus shook everything up for the last couple of years. So no shortage of things to talk about. And then, of course, fingers crossed, a lot of Bomber chats with you on this channel as well. So keep it up, man. Thanks so much. And congrats on the new pad. By the way, lots of people really loving the wallpaper in the background in the new Hammer Dome.
I was on a panel quickly. I was on a panel for an award I was nominated for the Graham James series, and I got about 10 emails about like, where's that wallpaper behind you? Yeah, it's probably gonna go, but it's when I get the light up and I get really close, there's no need for a suit jacket. So it's it's an interesting one. Appreciate the comments, but I don't know how long it's gonna live for. We'll see.
Have a great one, dude. We'll catch up soon.
Take care, guys.
Great stuff. There's Jeff Hamliton from the Winnipeg Free Press with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Big thanks to our great sponsor, Boston Pizza, Winnipeg. Man, Andrew and the gang and Wrights have been great supporters of ours right from day one. And, feeling for them and everyone that works at the BPs right now and the entire restaurant industry. Cannot wait to be able to get back, whether it's just on the patio to start off. We'll take that right now. But soon, especially for next year, we're going to be having some fun over at Boston Pizza. We'll get the Winnipeg Sports Talk gang together with some schooners, some great pizzas in the Boston Pizza lounges. But in the meantime, you can pick up the pizza pairs or the game day deal or everything on the Boston Pizza menu for delivery or takeout. You can order online at Boston Pizza Winnipeg. And of course, Aikens Lake, hoping to get some good news for our friends at Aikens that they'll be able to get back open. And when they do, we know that traveling is still a major issue right now. Why not get ready for a world-class fly-in fishing experience right here in the province of Manitoba? You can be on the water within 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg. AikensLake.com online, or find out more. Hit him up on Twitter. Our good friend Pitt Turen at Aikens Lake, and take up some of those spots that are normally reserved for American tourists that aren't coming north of the border this summer. And of course, it's Wednesday, and that means live racing at Assiniboia Downs. I was 0 for last night on my picks. Michael Remis, though, hit the Quinella late and has extended his lead over me in the duel at the Downs. We will have our selections for Wednesday night's race card coming up in just a couple minutes. But in the meantime, you can bet at hpibet.com. You can watch all the races as well as horse racing from around the world. And on the Assiniboia Downs, both YouTube channel and website, 645, Kirk, Stretch, Marshall, they'll give you all their picks for this evening's races to maybe give you a few winners before you make your wagers as well. hpibet.com for Assiniboia Downs, and we'll get to those picks in just a minute, as well as our lines of the day for our gaming partner, coolbet.com. Remo, let's get you back in here. We will get to our picks in a moment, but we went head-to-head on that Quinella on that final race. 8 came in. I think you had 2. You had 3. I had 2, and it ended up being 8-3. And That was a tough break to start the day, finding out that you got that last win in race 7.
Watch out for me in the horse racing. Now, I didn't win. I mean, I bet $10 on that, and I only won 14, but I'll make up for the other bets I lost. So I ended up close to breaking even. So watch out for me on the horse racing. I've taken over. I've dominated a lot of sports, fantasy, hockey, all of them, baseball, football.
Huge Barry Horowitz moment going on right now on the show.
Horse racing, this is my first time really getting into the nuts and bolts of, what do they call it? The track?
Yeah,
I don't know.
The track? The ponies?
Like you got the octagon, you got the squared circle. What's
the track. I think it would just be the track.
Sure, the track. So watch out for me. I got some winners coming up, although I had to make my picks very quickly because I was cutting all these Jets clips.
Now, do we have the Gerrit Cole for later?
I can bring up the Gerrit Cole.
Okay, perfect. We'll just get that. We're going to get to that in a minute. We got to talk. Yeah, that's what I'm just saying. We need to get that for
Scheifele.
the end.
I guess we could still do some of them tomorrow if we really want, but I think the Scheifele is the one. It's like getting retweeted by I see Tim and Friends putting out a video of
yes, you
quote.
Must be referring to number 2, Scheifele on the hit, or the promo that we just heard and nobody believed in us in number 4. I think it's Scheifele on the hit because this is Murat. Yeah. Murat tweeted this out. I spent a couple of minutes looking at the replies, and let's just say it's still a hot topic in the hockey world. You want to fire up number 2?
Let me just go back to the nobody believed in us because I didn't get a chance to weigh in.
Oh, yes, yes.
I mean, I agree. As part of it, I think he's referring to national media because when he says you guys, and it's all local media on the call. So when you say media, I think you need to clarify. And I agree, part of it, national media. I mean, Sportsnet clearly had no interest in the Jets against the Oilers. I mean, every intermission was on the Oilers. They don't care. I mean, you can tell.
There was an intermission where the Jets did not get mentioned in a game that they were playing.
And it was apparent to everyone. It's apparent to my my grandmother, who's a big Jets fan. She asked me, why do the national broadcasters hate the Jets? And she loves Dennis and Kevin. She might be even watching this right now. We showed her how to use YouTube.
Hey, buddy.
But as far as Mike Scheifele goes, I mean, everyone counted the Jets out against Oilers. We watched them play in the regular season. They were awful. If you picked the Jets to beat the Oilers after the way Connor McDavid worked them all season, I would have asked if you had a brain. So I know Ken picked the Jets, I think, in 7, Ken Wiebe. But, that's an impossible pick to make based on what you saw. So, good for them. But as far as coming into the season, we all knew the Leafs would be number 1, the Sens number 7, and in that, it was just a giant crapshoot. So I think some of those were inaccurate. The parts with the national media wanting, Edmonton and Toronto to match up McDavid.
100% true.
That was true. And then I do agree with you when he said, and by the way, we love you hardworking people of Winnipeg, and everyone cheers. It was like when I went to a Kiss concert.
Mick Foley was somewhere smiling when he heard the end of that one.
I'll remember when I went to a Kiss concert, they were like, hey, Winnipeg, we know you're better than Saskatoon, and everyone starts cheering.
Kiss was the greatest for that. We won't get down our Kiss stories, but at some point in the summer when we have less topics, we'll have some fun with things like that. But listen, let's get to number 2 because this was Scheifele on the hit, which of course I don't think he still wants to talk about, but is still a topic considering he's going to be out for the opening game of next season, and he's probably having to talk about it throughout the summer as well. Here's 55.
I think at the end of the day, you regret the outcome of it. I said that over and over. You never want to see a guy hurt, and I'm a guy that that respects this game and respects players, and I never want to see a guy hurt no matter what it is. But at the end of the day, I was trying to negate a goal. I'm coming back on the back check to prevent a goal and go back the other way. I've played 6-on-5 my entire life. I'm out there to score goals. I'm not out there to hit guys. I'm out there to try to prevent a goal and try to win the game. So I would have loved, an answer from them of what would have been a better thing to do. Cause I've replayed the thing over and over in my mind. And the only real thing is if I gave up on my teammates, on that play and just didn't back check. So, it's over and done with. I'm not going to you know, I'm not going to continue to cry over it, but it's the decision they made. I still believe it was excessive. I still believe it wasn't, they knocked me out of the series. I don't even get a chance to play with my teammates and battle with my teammates in the series. For a guy with a clean record. So, I'm just going to stop talking before I get fined or something like that. So I'll just leave it as it is.
There, you know what? I almost love it. I mean, listen, he might, I know a lot of people are rankled by it, that there was no apology, that, Mark Scheifele, continues to say he believes that he was in the right. Well, he does. And you know what? If he does, I don't want him to come up and say something that he doesn't believe. Now, listen, it was incredibly impactful in the series, an unfortunate moment. And I think if you go back and if you could redo it, I mean, yeah, don't hit the guy, so you're not out of the series. But in that moment, I mean, Remo, I do remember saying to a couple guys that I know that have been critical of Scheifele's back checking in the past and his defensive play, and the competitiveness of the playoffs and all that. And I mean, they'd said, listen, if Scheifele gets to that point and gives up on the play and does the old Olay bullfighter move and gets around him, he would have been killed for that too. Now, listen, it was really unfortunate just how violent that hit was. As Maurice said, it was a heavy, heavy hit. And it blew the guy up, and unfortunately he got hurt. The visual of him getting carried off on a stretcher was really scary. And I think that, and not to mention the focus on this game between the two Canadian teams with all the people watching, all conspired for maybe a stricter penalty for Mark Scheifele than we've come accustomed to from NHL player safety. But it's pretty clear that he is still rankled about the length of the suspension, the fact that, it took him out of the series. And I'll tell you what, being up there in the press box, watching his team without him play the way they did must have been absolute torture for Mark Scheifele over the past week since game one.
Yeah, I said here that the suspension was too long. I thought it was a solid body check. Of course, there was charging, which led to the, excessive force. I think Mark Scheifele here at a certain point, they asked him what he would do differently, and he said nothing. I think at a certain point, just publicly, you have to say, hey, you know what? Obviously, I wouldn't have laid the hit because I got suspended for it. And I think people want to hear him say that, and he's kind of doubling down. And now we have more from him coming up, which is the money clip that's going on. I mean, someone came in to the chat like 40 minutes into the show. I was like, are you guys not playing Scheifele? I'm like, hey, man. The headliner goes on last. The headliner doesn't open the show. So we're gonna get to it. The clip is coming up, but I thought he could. I mean, he doubled down on it, and I think he's not looking great among national media. I think here he's gonna be a fan favorite. I know Jets fans have his back, but I think he could have came out and said, obviously I wouldn't have laid that hit because I got suspended for it. That's all you need to say. And he kind of went, and then he went full blast.
In some of the ways, it's just another extension of the mood that he was in when he went back at McIntyre about the media that, nobody believing us. I mean, they really have built up an us against the world mentality, at least amongst that core, Wheeler and Scheifele for sure. And that's what we said. So we do have one more clip. This is Scheifele, who was just asked about the setbacks that, he and the team went through.
Like I said before, John Rahm said, the way we handle setbacks is what defines us. That's what you have to do. There's going to be setbacks in your life. There's going to be bad things that are going to happen. There's going to be good things that are going to happen. And I'm very, very lucky to I have, amazing people around me, and I'm a very, very fortunate person. So, I can't let one bad thing, knock me down. Obviously it's crushing to, that my season was ended by that. And I wasn't able to play in this series. I thought I was going to be tried to shut down by Philip Deneau, and, it was Department of Player Safety that shut me down. So that definitely sucks.
That's the money quote right there. I was thinking Deneau is going to try to shut me down, and NHL Player Safety shut me down. Hey, they're still sour about it. Jets fans are still sour about it. And as I said on this program, I expected there would be a suspension. I was stunned that it was 4 games considering what we'd seen. And, unfortunately, that was a huge part of just how that series unraveled so completely for the Winnipeg Jets. I will say this about Scheif. Being a sports nerd as I am, that spends all his time consuming sports stuff and very narrow in other things, I got to give him a shout out. Like in the past 2 weeks, he's dropped a John Rahm reference quote, Tom Brady, and as well as cited Tim Tebow's book. I mean, he really has given us some incredible sports references in some of these quotes that he's been giving us, Reem. I'm here for it all.
I wanted to give you a shout out, Huss, for mentioning that, because I was going to mention that how many athletes? I mean, he dropped Tiger Woods before this start of the playoffs, and then yes,
as Matt Lang,
stuff going.
Matt Lang just said, quoting John Rahm right now, a bold choice, LOL, considering what happened. But of course, he's referring to, the way Rahm responded to just the unbelievable scene on the weekend, which was it was the reverse bad beat. This is the greatest thing that happened to me maybe in my betting career, with Cantlay coming in and cashing that ticket on the weekend with no business doing it because of an unbelievable, almost inconceivable COVID positive DQ or withdrawal after the 3rd round. But yes, of course, Rahm's now in solitary confinement up until next Wednesday, where he have 1 day to get a practice round in before the U.S. Open. But I think a lot of people looking at thinking he might be due.
One more thing about the suspension. I think the part that's, people are saying, oh, it's not like, it's not the 90s anymore. I will just say, if you've watched the Winnipeg Jets over the last 4 years, you have seen a number of hits to the head that have injured Jets players. And there have been no suspensions. Little has had a couple, Kunin and Strawman. Blake Wheeler had 2 this year, one from Brady Tkachuk, one from, who's the other one? One from, what's his face, Sandin. And Lowry took a hit to the head. Lowry took a hit to the head as well. There's been no suspensions on hits to the head for Jets players, which I think makes this so frustrating.
And Bobby Hull, of course, Brian Little on Strawman. It goes down the list. Listen, they did. Maurice said they sort of set a precedent with this, and everyone here in Winnipeg is, oh, great. Finally, you decide to do something about this at the expense of a guy that has the cleanest rap sheet in the National Hockey League on a first offense in the playoffs with a really significant penalty as they go forward.
And I think that's the issue. And someone, I think it was Dom Zappi in chat, said it's also the visual of, the guy going flying, carrying on a stretcher. Look, if you want to suspend him, that's fine, but it's pretty clear it was, based on precedent, it was excessive. And I also do think you're disappointed as a Jets fan that the league isn't doing anything to protect the Jets. And with the Malkin jump head hit on Wheeler as well, where they had to fight after. If we all remember that. It's just fun. Sorry, I like going down memory lane. This is like, I feel like they do this a lot on Hockey Night in Canada. They're like, hey, Kevin Bieksa, you remember that series you were in 10 years ago? Let's show the highlight. Oh, Kelly Rudy. Hey, guys, I played hockey too. Let's show one of my highlights. So we can do that here, right?
Well, you're the Chris Jericho of Winnipeg Sports Talk, because NHL player safety has just made the list of Remis, and we have quite a long list that goes down. All right, listen, before we get to the bets for tonight and the pony picks, let's just get a couple more. Let's listen to Ehlers and Stastny if we can, because both key players of this hockey club. Stastny, of course, with an uncertain future. Ehlers a big part, and Ehlers, who was injured coming into the playoffs, talked about what he was going through over the course of the last few weeks.
I was 100%. Let's put it that way. It was a shoulder injury and a first rib injury. I'm not exactly sure how much I'm allowed to say, but I
think you're good.
Right?
Yeah.
I had a posterior labrum tear in my shoulder that I've had for a while. That's nothing new, but it has gotten a little bit worse. So, and then I got a first rib cartilage fracture. But I felt good. It just took a little longer than expected. unfortunately.
All right, so there's Nick Ehlers.
Yeah.
It is so
Yeah,
funny.
I
Like,
had
the
a
season's
rib
over.
fracture.
Yeah.
torn labrum. Yeah, I felt really good though. I mean, there's a bit of a pause there before he said he's 100%.
Hey, you know what? He's a tough little SOB. I mean, listen, I don't think there's not one person I have yet to hear, certainly not in the chat, that doesn't appreciate what Nikolaj Ehlers did for this club this year. And, you know, that was part of what was so fantastic about the way the Jets were able to win those games early in the Edmonton series, was that they did it without the guy that, you know, was their most dangerous offensive player this season. You know, the future's so bright for Ehlers. The fact that he's on the long-term contract with the Winnipeg Jets. If you're looking for things to, you know, be excited going forward, we heard from Connor Hellebuyck earlier. Of course, Nikolaj Ehlers a massive, massive part of that. Now, big questions, though, about Paul Stastny. I don't know about you folks. I would love to see Stastny back. Obviously, it wouldn't be at the salary that he's on with his current contract at his age, but I mean, a guy that brings so much to a hockey team like the Winnipeg Jets, you know, both on the ice and off the ice. And Stastny was just asked about, you know, his situation going into unrestricted free agency and his approach to his next decision.
Yeah, and I think for me, I mean, whatever happens, I'll probably just take my time away with it. I think it's now that I'm older. I think options are probably more limited, but you kind of have an idea of, you know, what's best for me, what's best for my family. And then I think with the expansion draft and everything that's going on, I'm for sure teams are going to be busy trying to figure that stuff out. So, you know, when it comes to dealing with you know, my agent and my family and my old man, I think we kind of also there together and kind of figure out, be patient. We'll be patient about it, and there's no rush. And I kind of have an idea of, you know, what places you want to play at, but, you know, you want to be what's a good fit for you, and you want to go somewhere where you're wanted to. So, you know, like I said, I've had nothing but good things to say here, and, you know, I know the future has always been bright, and it continues to be bright, and there's always going to be a chance here. And I think that's a really important piece to picking a team you want to play at.
All right, so there's Stastny. I mean, obviously, he's going to have some options. It'll take a while. He seems so chill about it, too, Reem. I guess when you've had the career that he's had, hit the 1,000 games this year, you know, the money's not, like, I don't think the money is going to be the deal breaker for Paul Stastny. I think the things that he mentioned, two key things: what makes sense for he and his family, and the ability to, you know, have a chance to win, to expect to be a playoff team, to have a chance to win the Stanley Cup. And, listen, as disappointing as the Montreal series was, I think Paul Stastny sees a lot of talent in this locker room, a goalie that you can certainly count on to give you a chance. And, you know, I certainly think that Winnipeg will be in that mix. And, you know, I wonder if he does come back, regardless of what that number is, what that role is for Paul Stastny. I mean, is he automatically continuing to be a second-line player? Does the third line look different? Where is Adam Lowry next year? And then, of course, there's Cole Perfetti. And the Perfetti story is so interesting because I think 6 months ago, we couldn't have possibly imagined the situation that he'd be in. But considering what he did, World Juniors, most importantly at the American Hockey League level, really standing out over the course of the, you know, the second half of the season, and then going to the World Championships, the fact that Cole Perfetti has to go back to the Ontario Hockey League if he's not on the Jets next year, I don't know what he's going to gain from that. So I really do think that he'll be given an opportunity to be on this roster next year, unfortunately, without the option of playing down the hallway with the Manitoba Moose, which was so beneficial for him as an 18-year-old.
Yeah, I wish they would put some exemption in for him to play with the Moose. I mean, he played with them this year. He showed that he can hang with the league. I don't know. I feel like they should have some exemption. I know you want to help those OHL teams keep their stars, but I think you also want to help the players develop. So we'll wait and see what happens. You know, it was interesting to see, you know, Jets fans are looking at Montreal, who have young guys like Suzuki and Caulfield who've been given a chance to play and succeed. I'd like to see Perfetti get some, maybe he'll get his 9 games and then they shut him down before
it's
the
funny
last
you
one.
bring
I
up
don't know.
it's funny you bring up Caulfield. Well, no, I mean, if he's playing next year, it's going to be a year on the ELC. I mean, what, is he just going to not play? I mean, at a certain point, you got to play games. I mean, you're better off even at a junior level playing every night and, you know, presumably getting better. But I think for Perfetti, he's shown that he's ready to play against men. And, you know, I think that maybe has sped up the possibility of him being a part of this Winnipeg Jet lineup. we'll have much more on the Jets tomorrow. As I said, we'll hear from Coach Paul Maurice and Kevin Cheveldayoff, discuss what they've had to say. We'll bring in Ken or Ren tomorrow on the program as well. There's a couple other things we want to have some fun with before the end of the show, but quickly, let's get to the cool bet lines of the day, because tonight we could have another team book their ticket to the Final Four for the Stanley Cup playoffs, and that team is Barry Trotz's New York Islanders, who are a home underdog tonight after escaping Game 5 in Boston with a 5-4 win despite being outshot 42-19. Islanders paying plus 117 to finish the job on the Bruins tonight at home. Boston minus 132 on the money line to force a deciding 7th game. And for tomorrow night, line is already up. Vegas Golden Knights, 1 win away from eliminating the favorite Avalanche. Vegas minus 125 favorites to get it done at home. And the Avalanche on the road plus 110 to extend it to 7 and get the series back to Denver for a winner-take-all matchup. Those are the cool bet lines of the day for the National Hockey League. You can also check out the golf odds for the Palmetto Championship, French Open, Euro 2022 coming up right away. I guess Euro 2020, which is now in 2021. I know that's quite confusing. We'll do something on that before kickoff on Friday as well. So all that there, and we'll put up the bonus code as well if you want to take advantage of a 100% bonus on your first deposit. We've got the link for you on our Twitter feed at Winnipeg Sports Talk or at Sports Talk WPG. Make sure you're following us as well. Same tag on Instagram and on Facebook. All right, Remis, you got it done again last night. You got a W. I did not. I need a winner tonight, or hopefully a few winners at Assiniboia Downs. Parade to post 7:20. First race getting going just after 7:30 tonight. What are the wagers that you have laid down with your 20 spot for tonight, Reem?
Yes, I got 20. Here's my picks. Oh, you guys you can see that here. I have 10 on race 3, horse 1 to win, and 10 on race 4, also horse 1 to win. So I'll give you the names. Holly Hannah, I have to win on race 3, and also race 4, I have McCaig to win. So
all right.
They're the number 1 horse for a reason, Huss. That's why, because they're going to win. It's not a coincidence.
I'm making 3 wagers today. I'm starting off going hard in race 1 with a Quinella, $10 on 3 and 5. That is Amy on Tour and Sophie McTrophy. Now, did you not have Sophie McTrophy in one of our earlier wagers? This is their second race.
I think I had Sophie McTrophy before and won on them. So
excellent. Well, let's see if Sophie McTrophy can do it for me tonight. A 3-5 Quinella in race number 1. That's my $10 bet. Then I've got 2 winners. I'm going for race number 4. We're taking horse number 5, Etu Babu, which is Richard Mangley's horse. We'll look forward to seeing if he can take out the favorite, Euro Silver Biz. And then my final wager, race number 6. I'm going with an underdog horse, Young Boy, with Neville Stevenson. $5 to win on that. That is race horse number 2 in race number 6. You can get far better picks with the guys from Assiniboia Downs. They'll be live at 6:45, breaking it all down on ASD Live. And I hope to have a great story of winning and closing the gap between me and Remis for on tomorrow's show. Assiniboia Downs, asdowns.com. And again, if you want to bet with us, you can do it at hpibet.com. Remis, you know what our favorite non-sports story is right now? Vaccine incentives. And
yes,
do we have a big one, folks? Get ready. If you have already got your shot, you're fired up. Oh, Gregory Liverpool. Breaking news. We are allowed to golf with different people outside your household, Hustler. That is great. Oh, Greg. Yes.
Someone posted in chat, you can have people outside on your private property, so I don't have to tell them we can meet at the park or something.
You know what? That is good. I mean, I'm any idea if we can go to a patio? That would be nice for the restaurants,
I haven't seen.
I'm sure.
I haven't seen. I've been here, so I don't know. I'm just going
small
by
victories
saying
though.
in chat.
Golfing and some outdoor gatherings sounds great. I think it's about time. People need it. And but let's just keep getting these numbers down, getting the shots going. And to get those shots going, Remis, the province of Manitoba opening the vaults with $2 million. All you need to do is have your first shot ready and then get your second shot by a certain date. And I guess in Winnipeg, 3 separate $100,000 prizes. In the other health authorities, a $100,000 prize for each one. And for ages 12 to 17, every youth that gets vaccinated is in for $10,000, $25,000 scholarships, because I guess by law, kids under 18 cannot win cash. So those scholarships, as I said, my big idea, if you're going to work with liquor and lotteries, just get a vaccine. You get a $25 token to go play VLTs. I mean, you get the money back right away. I mean, it wouldn't be as costly as the straight up $1 million. But listen, we've had some fun with this. We've talked about the free beer. There was the epic one where the strip club was giving the VIP card, the limo ride, and private dances from a vaccinated entertainer. But I'll tell you what, I think Winnipeggers and Manitobans who love the thought of hitting it big or winning something, this might push some people that we need to get with the program a little bit closer.
Yeah, and I also saw in Washington State House, they have a new program, Jabs for Joints, where if you get a vaccine, you get some weed. So I don't think
weed?
Yeah, I think we're in the early stages of vaccine bribes in Manitoba, where the government's going to say, hey, we're going to have these lotteries. I think we need to get some private businesses in offering some stuff. We've seen, free tickets for Mets and Yankees fans if you get a vaccine on site. I don't know, maybe the Bombers or the Jets or someone wants to come in and offer something. I think free VLT vouchers, I think that would, it's just going to go right back to them, so why not?
It's like immediately returned to the government of Manitoba.
Yeah, and they'll probably end up spending more, so maybe it's a good thing. And so I'm curious how this is going to go. They did announce, I'm a big NFT guy. They announced the vaccine NFTs yesterday. So if you get 2 shots, you get an NFT, a number saying that you got it. So we'll be monitoring it.
If Remis wins the money, we won't see him ever again. Yeah, we'll be hiring you to come in and be the CTO or somebody. Ricardo Benito. What up, Ricardo? I get where Scheifele is coming from. Tkachuk took him out and nothing happened.
Yes.
Now he takes Evans out and he gets crucified. Yes, his hit was bad, but Tkachuk was no saint on his hit too. Certainly did flip that series. And I will say this, I was on with Pat Steinberg in Calgary doing the shows on Sportsnet 960. And before I came on with the guys, usually I'll come on from 3 to 6, but Pat starts at 2 just because there's some overlap from Winnipeg Sports Talk. So I was tuned in before I jumped on, and they were playing the Maurice clip of, him defending Scheifele and saying, hey, it was a heavy hit. It was unfortunate, but there's a good. And then they went and played right afterwards it was a dirty, disgusting hat. We all remember the Maurice quote after the Tkachuk hit. Was that even a hit? The slicing of Mark Scheifele. But I'll say this about Paul Maurice, and we'll be talking a lot about the coach we'll hear from tomorrow. That is a guy that publicly always has his players and his team's back, even if sometimes it might be putting him into a difficult situation, like I think it was with the Scheifele hit. But certainly the coach was steadfast behind the player. And Remo, we heard from the player again, and it sounds like his attitude on the entire experience and incident hasn't changed at all over the past week. And if anything, what happened to his team in his absence has made him even more angry about the result of his hit and the ensuing suspension.
Yeah, look, we know Paul Maurice is going to go to bat for his players, so I'm not surprised by that. And that's part of the reason why, whatever they say up there, you can't really take 100% seriously. But I agree, that Tkachuk hit, it should have been looked at. It wasn't just because of the guy's reputation. I don't know why maybe he tried to do something with his skate, but there's no reason for that to happen if you're trying to hit a guy. And that was another one up against the Jets. We were like, why is nothing being looked at here when it's against the Jets? But, Mark Scheifele, who's, again, never, people were joking it's the first time that he's back-checked, first time he's thrown a hit, blah, 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 gets 4 games. The 4 games is kind of bizarre. I agree. What were we talking about also? Oh, about why he's so salty? Yeah, he was very pissed off. I think he should have came out and said that he regrets throwing the hit because he got suspended. And that's all you need to say. He doubled down way too hard and then started going after the media like he's Wayne Gretzky at the 2002 Salt Lake Olympics. That was one of the most legendary speeches. No, everyone wants Canada to lose, blah, blah, all the countries. I think it was after a game against Czech where they were getting mauled and no penalties were called. So, they do it. I learned from Hockey Night in Canada. They bring up all these games. Hey, let's show this clip from 20 years ago, Kelly Rudy getting scored on.
Well, as I said,
20 years. I guess it's 2021. It'll probably be longer than that. 30, more like 30 years. Sorry, I keep thinking 20 years ago is 1990, but no, that's not true.
No, 20 years ago is
It's
after
2001.
2001. That's
Yeah.
It seems 20 years ago feels like 2018 with what we've been through for the last 2 years around here.
Man.
I mean, like it does seem that far away. Somebody just said like 400. Travis, what up, Trav? 400 private Manitoba businesses have said they are doing a Vax giveaway. We're going to have to look it out. I do believe the Wheaties, shout out to the Brandon Wheat Kings, got a shout out from the Premier today saying that they had started their own vaccine promotion. And it is interesting. And, you know, for those of you that are sports fans, you know, seeing the buy-in from these teams, Bombers, certainly Wheat Kings, I mean, they need these shots to happen to get people back in the stands. It's very simple. So no kidding. They're going to be doing everything they can to promote it. I think we all should because that's going to get us closer. As Mike Krzyzewski says, more shots means more of these together with their some little brown jug emojis there going forward. Brown-eyed girl MJD, who was mad at me when I admitted that I do not like the Boston Bruins. But we've gotten over that. Brown-eyed girl and I are back together. I work in healthcare. Please, everyone get vaccinated. We don't get out of restrictions without it. Amen to that. No one wants to do it. It's a lot like the policy me read we had earlier, getting life insurance. It's not really something that you want to do or you're excited to do, but you know, you need to do it. Policeme.com. Go and check it out.
Wait,
tell them that
everyone out there is doing like PSAs to get vaccinated. Did you just record one that I can tweet out? Hustler says, get the shot.
Did. Yeah. And life insurance as well at policeme.com if you need it. Yes, T-Kona Pauly, just quickly, I should mention, this happened sort of just at the end of the show yesterday. We talked about the MJHL expanding to Niverville. Great to see them. And of course, their rink got damaged in those storms on the weekend. They're for the following year. But the Neepawa MJHL team officially has a new name. They are now the Neepawa Titans. So congratulations on that. You know, we've got a couple great new names. Titans in Neepawa, the Elks in Edmonton. And did see a report that the Elks have just been selling a crazy amount of merchandise with the new logo and team name. So great to see that that's been received as it has been. Remo, I do want to touch on this spider tack bit. Can we get the Gerrit Cole? Because it's always fun seeing athletes, you know, in the looking into the headlights in the media and basically seeming very, very guilty and not knowing what to say. And just a little primer for you. There's a big talk in Major League Baseball right now about substances that pitchers have been using to affect the baseball, and the RPMs that we're seeing on some of the pitches this year and over the past couple years have been absurdly out of whack with what has been, you know, traditionally in baseball. And I mean, this is sort of like the pitchers' versions of steroids. And there's one particular material called spider tack. And it was invented by a guy that was doing like strongman competitions. If you're watching with this on YouTube, you know, there's those events where they have the huge granite ball and, you know, you got to put your hands on it. And this is like the stickiest stuff ever made, essentially. And they stick it on and, you know, it helps you grip the ball when you're doing these ridiculous strongman competitions. Well, some journalists tracked down this guy that invented it, and he had no idea that it could or would be used in baseball. But it's now turned into a very, very big issue. And Gerrit Cole, who I believe, what did he sign for? $324 million from the Yankees?
Yeah, he got some crazy contract.
324. And I mean, I guess the big question now is this the guy that was juicing and hit 65 home runs and then signed the 13-year deal on news? So anyways, Cole was in a media availability yesterday, and the reporter asked him directly if he had been or had ever used spider tack, and he had no idea what to say.
I don't know. I don't know if I don't quite know how to answer that, to be honest. I mean, there are customs and practices that have been passed down from older players to younger players, from the last generation of players to this generation of players. And, you know, I think there are some things that are certainly out of bounds in that regard. And I've stood pretty firm in terms of that, in terms of the communication between our peers and whatnot. You know, and I, again, like I mentioned earlier, there's, you know, this is important to a lot of people that love the game, and this is including the players in this room, including fans, including, you know, teams. And so if MLB wants to, you know, legislate some more stuff, that's a conversation that we can have, because ultimately we should all be pulling in the same direction on this.
That is one of my favorite clips in such a long time. I mean, here's the translation from my perspective. He's asked about it. He's sitting there, not saying anything, going, "Oh shit, I'm busted. What the hell am I going to possibly say?" An extra pause. Am I going to get bailed up by the PR director? Is someone going to come in? No. I still have to answer this. Okay. Well, guys, how can I say this? Veterans have been teaching younger players how to cheat in baseball for years. It's sort of a rite of passage, and the traditions and things that go on in the game is just part of things. But if we do need to look at or all get on the same page, I'm here for it. In other words, you're damn right I've been using this stuff. It helped me get a $324 million contract from my new team, the New York Yankees, and this is the most uncomfortable moment of my professional career.
First of all, I thought my computer froze while playing that video because
so did I.
Yeah, I was like, is this? And I watched it a couple times before this. I still thought it froze. And you know what? I don't blame Gerrit Cole. I don't blame any of the pitchers. I remember Dirk Hayhurst came on the old station, and he talked about putting together sunscreen and rosin and all these different, you know, substances that let you get grip on the ball. Well, this spider tack is that like times 1,000. So I think I blame Major League Baseball. They let the pitchers do this. They never checked in on it. It's just like the steroid era.
The home runs and steroids in '98.
Yeah. And the players knew that, okay, we can get away with this. And they just took it further and further, looking for the grippiest substance ever imagined. I think there's going to be a point, Huss, where a pitcher throws the ball with this spider tack and the ball doesn't leave his fingers. It's just stuck there. I think, people are talking about, I think it was a foul ball, like, that hit Yadier Molina's chest protector and just stuck onto it. That's how serious this is. So, like, I mean, I think that they're going to try to crack down on it now, but I don't blame Gerrit Cole. I don't blame any of the pitchers. It's obvious this is going on in Major League Baseball. Did nothing. They let the pitchers do this, and the pitchers, you know, you give someone an inch, they'll take a mile, and the pitchers did that. So, good for him. He got $320 million. We'll see how it changes, but there's way too much. I mean, you look at the spin rates on the ball now. I think people have done tests using spider tack and just regular grip, and it's like 10 times more
it's
spin
absurd.
rate. So,
it's absurd.
Yeah.
And bus split, great point, but BA, a lot of no-hitters this year. And that is big. We were getting a no-hitter like every 2 or 3 days earlier in the season, and you know, more and more investigation goes into this. It does seem like it's a problem for Major League Baseball. So we'll see where it goes from here. What do you think tonight, Reem? Islanders book their ticket, or will we have a Game 7?
Our last game at the Coliseum, it's going to be rocking. I'm going with the Islanders. Their fan base seems energized. I'm happy for them. They've had a lot of futility since those heyday years of the 80s. I'd love to see Boston get eliminated by them. So I'm going with, I'll go with the Islanders at home.
Yeah, I'm hoping the Islanders can get it done. And, of course, if they do that, it won't be the last game of the Coliseum because they'll have a date with the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Final Four for a trip to the Stanley Cup Final. Looking forward to that. We'll have some hoops tonight as well. And tomorrow should be a great show because we will hear the season-ending comments from Coach Paul Maurice of the Winnipeg Jets as well as General Manager Kevin Cheveldayoff. We'll have lots to digest and dissect from that, Reem, as well as getting ready for the Euro, which begins on Friday. Really looking forward to that. That'll be fun to kind of follow, become big international soccer fans for a couple weeks as the best in the world go at it in what was supposed to happen last summer.
Yeah, that's fun to get to in the summer. You know, we're in this period now with no Jets. Credit to the Jets, though, for dragging out these press conferences, giving us content each day. Imagine if they just did them all today. It'd be too much to get to. And we didn't get to some players. Maybe we'll get to Andrew Kopp. We didn't really talk about him. He's an RFA coming in. Logan Stanley talked about his, first season. Dylan DeMello talked about his injury as well. So still lots to get to with the Jets. We're not going to stop talking about them. The expansion draft is just over a month away as well, and a lot of talk about that. So, we didn't have too many Habs fans in here anymore, but a lot of Jets fans in. The conversation has definitely been fun. I do appreciate everyone coming out, and if you haven't, hit that like button. We could use those likes more than ever.
Travis, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And then the Royal Sports guys pop in. Just ask the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick. Yes, exactly. What a great way to end the program. Shout out to Greg and the gang at Royal for their support. And as well, Royal Sports, as well as PolicyMe.com, Nick and Nikki DQ, Not AutoCorp, Little Brown Jug Brewing, Breezy Bend Country Club, Boston Pizza, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, and Assiniboia Downs. Post time tonight, 7:20 p.m. 3-5 Quinella, race 1. That's what I'm rolling with. And of course, coolbet.com. Folks, thanks for hanging out with us. For all of you that were with us on YouTube, for those of you that are listening on the podcast and got all the way to the end, thank you for doing this. It's great to have you with us, and make sure to spread the word on Winnipeg Sports Talk. We'll be back tomorrow. More Jets season wrap up, hearing from head coach Paul Maurice and general manager Kevin Cheveldayoff. We'll do it again tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Have a great night, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.